Hey, this is Rich with Trail Hero, and you're listening to the Trailhead Podcast.
Hey Trailheads, welcome back to the Trailhead. I'm JD, and today we're diving into Trail Hero, one of the biggest events in the off-roading world now held each year in southern Utah. Trail Hero isn't just about the guided trail rides for all skill levels. It's a full-on celebration of off-roading, community, and of course land use advocacy. Randy Pope and myself sat down with Rich Klein to talk about how it's grown to over 6,000 registered vehicles and the huge impact that it's making on the local economy. Of course, we talk about their incredible community outreach too, providing access to people with special needs and, of course, veterans. We get deep into their involvement with land use and their fight to keep public lands open. You'll hear why showing up in big numbers matters so much and the importance of public involvement in general. And, of course, how Trail Hero is trying to push the off-road industry to be more inclusive and vocal about our trails. But it's not all serious talk. We got into the fun stuff too, like the Trailbreaker and We Rock competitions. We'll talk about the vendor shows, the live music, and the tons of other entertainment options available throughout the week. So if you're ready to hear about one of the most impactful events in off-roading, grab your gear and join us for the ride. Hello, Trailheads, and welcome to the Trailhead. Before the trails start today, we need to have a short safety meeting. Off-roading is an exhilarating but inherently risky sport. The insights and opinions that are shared by our hosts and any experts or guests on the podcast are intended to inform and inspire, not replace professional guidance. The Trailhead guests, partners, and any sponsors are not liable for any actions that you take based on what you hear. It is your responsibility to seek professional advice and make informed decisions, especially when attempting potentially dangerous activities. Always check current trail conditions and comply with local laws and regulations. Off-roading requires careful preparation and respect for safety, so ensure that you're well prepared before hitting the trails. And now that that's out of the way, buckle up and let the stories begin.
Welcome to the Trailhead, where trails start and stories unfold.
One, two, three.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Now here's JD.
All right, well, welcome to the Trailhead. I am JD. Today on the hosting panel, we've got Pope and Randy. How you guys doing?
Good.
Great. How you doing, JD?
I'm doing awesome. And our guest of the hour is Rich Klein from Trail Hero. How you doing, Rich?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you taking out some time. Like it's the beginning of August now. You've got what, a month and a half, 2 months now before you just don't sleep then.
Well, it's like what we try to do is lay down as much track as possible for this oncoming speeding train that's coming early October. And at one point or another, we just realized, usually by October 3rd, that we couldn't lay down enough track. We just done everything we can at this point. Now we just jump on the speeding train as it comes into town and hope that it doesn't create a wreck. that's
try to
putting
keep
on
all the
events.
pieces together.
Yeah, that's putting on events for you.
All right, that's all right. As long as you maintain it, and then you get to sleep in November.
Maybe.
Okay. At least to get a couple months off.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, for those of you not familiar with Trail Hero is a now yearly event. How many years have you guys been doing that?
We're going into our 9th year.
This will be the 9th year.
Yeah.
And it's grown quite substantially, hasn't it?
Yeah. So the first year that we did Trail Hero, we had about 420 vehicles signed up. And then now going into the 9th year, we're expecting well over 6,000. 6,000 was what we had last year, and we're trending at a 60% growth rate right now. So I would imagine we're going to be north of 6,000.
Wow, that's incredible.
For perspective, that is just registered participants. It doesn't include Music Fest people that come through or come to the event that aren't registered trail riders. And just that 6,000 registered trail riders is the largest trail ride event in the U.S.
Good Lord. You officially surpassed
it
DJS?
feels like it every year.
Yeah, we surpassed DJS in 2020, and we haven't looked back since.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, that's I personally feel like EJS is just it's turning in more of a SEMA. I feel like it's more of an industry event than it is.
Randy and I aren't on good speaking terms with EJS.
Whatever.
Well,
We're not.
I think EJS is absolutely
we never
imperative.
get out of there without damage.
Oh, right. I think EJS is imperative for our industry, and it's one of those things that, as much as there's a portion of Moab that doesn't want the off-roaders, and as much as the club has gotten kind of a little older in age and probably not as up to date or hip to the thing. At the end of the day, the industry needs Easter Jeep Safari and Moab specifically to be, kind of a staple within the industry. And if we don't have that, then what ends up happening is right now that Moab is that target, that proverbial target for all the land use, greenies, tree huggers, whatever you want to call them, the Sierra clubs and the SUAs of the world. And without Moab as an off-roading piece, now that target shifts to everyone else's backs. And it's kind of like roulette. We don't know where it's going to go, probably to ours. And so as much as people have asked us, during Easter Jeep Safari to host a competing event or, in some capacity do something against the Red Rock four-wheelers, we kind of refuse because we know that when we start moving towards a date and a thing and we start putting promotional behind it, there's a lot of synergy there, and it tends to grow pretty quickly like our event has. And the last thing we want to do is put to bed a great cause and a great group of people that really work hard to keep trails open in Moab.
Valid. Very valid. So for the uninitiated, let's do the basics. What's Trail Hero?
Trail Hero is a 5-day guided trail ride event where we take people from all sorts of walks of life and all sorts of skill levels and vehicles, and we take them off-roading here in southern Utah. Some of those are entry-level 2-rated trails where you just need a stock 4-wheel drive vehicle, or even an all-wheel drive vehicle will work, all the way up to the craziest and hardest core buggies possible. And within that is our community outreach programs, which the event is really structured around. And that's to provide motorized access to people with special needs and to veterans. And we do that throughout the course of the event. And for the most part, in the 8 years going into our 9th year, we've had over 5,000 veterans on the trails with us and over 1,000 people with special needs and kids out there on the trails with us as well. So the social impact has been pretty big. And then within the event itself, we've got last year $17.8 million economic impact to the local economy. So the event itself is the second largest event in southern Utah, behind only Ironman, which is a huge undertaking as well. So we've done kind of the right things to build the groundwork to have this very successful event. And it's really cool how the community's embraced us. And I think a big part of that is why we're able to have such success with, the people with special needs and the veterans user groups.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's the original purpose of getting things started, I think, is really what stands out to a lot of people. And that's the veterans resources and the disabled access. Like that's a big thing. And it's one of the things that we talk about when it comes to land use stuff, especially here, because, when you close off trails, you close off parts of the country to people completely.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize they vote a certain way or support a certain candidate. They a lot of times are throwing away not only their right but others' rights to land as well, public land. And so a lot of people are not able-bodied. They can't jump on a horse, ride a bike, go for a hike. They need some sort of motorized access to go experience the outdoors and all of the therapeutic benefits that the outdoor provides. So as soon as you vote to close down trails, essentially, or support user groups to save the world, you're also throwing away your rights and those rights of others as well. So we've been pretty active in the land use arena. We're currently part of 12 different lawsuits in part with Blue Ribbon, in part with Utah Public Lands Alliance, Tread Lightly, and a couple others. against the federal government to keep lands open.
And that's a big deal. Anytime, especially now that your organization is so large, you put your weight behind, behind anything like that. It's going to make a big deal.
Well, I think that off-roaders have in the past taken this idea that, the act or idea of rock crawling or off-roading is kind of a generational thing. And people on the other side of the aisle don't really care if your kids are going to do it or if your grandfather's done it or if you want your grandkids to do this thing. And what they do understand is the necessity of having that motorized access for people who, without it, would not be able to have the same experience. And so it's a narrative that is kind of growing a lot within the nation as a very positive message that both sides of the aisle can agree with. And
right.
we've had a lot of success with it.
That's awesome. I have to ask you real quick. You mentioned you had the two rated trails. What's you guys have a kind of a unique rating system, don't you? Like, because when you say extreme, you mean extreme. Like, so you went beyond the 10.
Yeah. So if you look at the rating system as a whole, the history of the rating system, I think it was based upon vehicle characteristics, the style of the trails at the time, and the skill of the driver. And so originally, you look at the rating system, it was 1 through 5. And that was great. 5 being the hardest trail that you could drive the vehicle on 35-inch tires and a full body. Eventually,
right.
we started building vehicles more capable than that and conquering trails harder than that. It made no sense to keep them at a 5 rating. So the rating kind of jumped up to a 10. And
right.
as a hardcore guy myself, I always imagined a 10 being nearly impossible or impossible itself. Yet we're knocking down 10s left and right now, and what you would take a 10 rated trail that would take 4 hours to 12 hours to complete, I'm literally driving in 25 minutes maybe. And so the capabilities of the vehicle, the capabilities of the driver have gone so much further that we decided to open up another rating, and that's to level 15, except this is the cap, right? We're not going higher than 15. And how we can say that is a trail that's never been conquered before is rated 15. And as soon as one person completes it, it drops to a 14. As soon as 20 people complete it, it drops to a 13, and so on. And the lightest it'll get is like an 11. And so, there's certain things in mind, like if you have rear steer, if you absolutely need rear steer to complete the trail, it'll never drop below a 12. So there's some different things that we've kind of put into this rating to where it doesn't eventually get blown out. And next thing you know, we're 100 rating and everyone's involved, and it's not.
Here comes Pope with his 90-inch tires on the 100 rated
and his
trail.
completion ribbon. It's not. That's just not the way the sport is, And so,
come on! I think you're missing an opportunity here for merch.
Right. Yeah.
So how big is the park as a whole? The Sand Hollow, because this all happens at Sand Hollow Park.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Southern Utah is where the event is, and Sand Hollow is where the majority of our event is. And within that, the Sand Hollow, it's actually Sand Mountain. A lot of people don't realize that. Sand Hollow is a state park that is adjoined to Sand Mountain. And there's like 6 Sand Mountains in Utah, so it's really hard to figure out which one. We just call it all Sand Hollow, just to make things a little simpler. Well,
I was about to blame Pope and Randy for that, so okay, we're good on that.
So the original locals, they'll call it Sand Mountain still, but everyone else calls it Sand Hollow because of all that. The Sand Mountain OHV area is only about 20,000 acres. However, there are, if you include everything beyond the plateau, which is what we call Sand Hollow, in Utah, it opens up to about 66,000 acres. And if you include the trail system behind on the other side of the border, because we are really close to the Arizona border, that opens up to about 166,000 acres of off-roading trails that we can go enjoy and have fun.
That's awesome. And then we kind of touched on this before we got started talking here, but there were 12 original trails on the mountain?
Yeah, I moved here. Well, first of all, when I originally came to Hurricane. I went to high school up the road about, 25, 30 miles in Cedar City. And we would come down to the Hurricane sand dunes. There was no lake. There was no houses. We'd meet at the Walmart and drive dirt road all the way out to the sand dunes. We'd drive around the rocks. And the whole purpose of me coming out here, because I was in high school, was to try to pick up on the Hurricane chicks that were hanging out in the dunes. And so there was, there'd be a bonfire and people hanging out. And that was a good spot to do that. Well, eventually I moved after high school, or in high school, moved out of the area, and then had an opportunity to move back in about 2014. And by the time I'd moved back, there was, a 5-star golf resort and a beautiful lake and all these houses that were, really pristine. And so it made sense to move as close to the park as possible. And when I did that, there was 12 trails on the mountain. I was here during the original first trail on the mountain, which was Milt's Mile. That's the if I remember right, the very first trail that was opened up on the mountain. Yep. So get here in 2014 with 12 trails on the mountain, and then I think it was at this point, 2024. We're looking at 64 trails on the mountain, and about 46 to 48 of those I've opened up myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was Milt's Mile originally called Milt's Mile, or did it get named after Milt shortly after?
Milt actually opened it, and it was always called Milt's Mile from the beginning.
Well, that's cool. Now it's like Milt's 2 miles or something like that.
Yeah, since it opened, it has now got a second half to it that the guys at Utah Public Lands Alliance added to the trail and some of their supporters, and that's it's about 2 miles now.
So what is the process for you guys for adding trails out there? Like, is it an open OHV, or is it kind of delineated? Is it a mixture?
It is the entire 20,000 acres that we know of the Sand Hollow Plateau is open OHV. It's one of the unique features of this park is the ability to go build trails and kind of drive wherever your heart desires.
Right.
But if you're going to build a trail and have it published, there is quite a process to doing that. And the first part of that is by getting the okay and the approval from the governing body or management. So what a lot of people don't realize is Sand Hollow, the state park, extends all the way up to the highway, and that's SR7 that kind of cuts through between the lake and the mountain. On the south side of SR7, everyone thinks that that's BLM land, Bureau of Land Management land, and it's actually not. Within that 20,000 acres are 13 different property owners or land managers. There's some big parcels that are called SITLA land, which is like a Schools Institute Trust Lands Association. Their whole job is to get money for their beneficiaries, and their beneficiaries happen to be 97% of them are the public schools here in Utah. So money that's made from those lands go to the schools. There's other private property parcels as well, and it's all one big group effort to manage the lands between, like interagency effort between Bureau of Land Management, State Park Recreation, Utah State Parks as well, and then the law enforcement throughout. So, at any point you'll have 4 or 5 different groups out there, like search and rescue. You'll have the sheriffs out there. You'll have state law enforcement. You'll even have city law enforcement out there as well as federal agents.
Okay.
So it's quite cumbersome when it comes to hosting an event. And then when you're building a trail, knowing whose land you're on is pretty imperative as well. So a lot of times somebody will build a trail that they think is on BLM land. They don't know where the property lines are. It might be on private property, or it might be a culturally sensitive area. And all of that kind of gets figured out in the process. So the first portion of that is submitting a rough sketch of, hey, I want to go in this general route. And BLM will tell you yes or no. State parks, all these different groups will tell you yes or no. And then from there, once you get the okay, you can start driving it, but you're not allowed to use any kind of mechanical means to build the trail. So you can't winch a rock into place. You can't use a rock bar to move a rock. You kind of just have to let the rock settle and the terrain dictate the difficulty of the trail. So there's a lot of times where we'll go into the trail wanting to build like a 5 rated trail because we feel the mountain probably needs more of those. And we'll come out of the trail realizing that it's more like a 7 rated trail. Because at the end of the day, if we could move 10 rocks and make it easier, we would, but we're not allowed to.
I think the easier ones will present themselves over time.
Yeah.
Those of us who are looking for them will find them.
Then outside the park, there's tons of easier trails. We only host about 6 trails outside of the park itself, but a group like Winter 4x4 Jamboree, they'll host half of their trails outside of Sand Hollow. And they do that a little bit more because their crowd is more open to the idea of traveling 20 miles to get to the trailhead to then run the trail. Whereas what I feel the Trail Hero crowd is a little bit more into camping on site and having everything kind of right there, easy access for all.
Spending the most time wheeling.
Yeah.
Oh, all the lineup in the morning when you get ready to go hit your trail, those are all like right there in the park.
Yeah,
you can easily find it.
Incredibly convenient for all of the trail riders. And what a lot of people don't realize is you get so absorbed in the 6 through 10 or 12 rated trails that are all staged there at the park with all of our vendors and all the craziness. But a lot of our every one of our 2 through 5 rated trails are stationed and staged from town. Different, whether it's 3 trails from different Maverick locations or one trail that leads from Rooster Run or whatever. We try to spread out and create some sort of economic impact in town as well.
Nice. So outside of the trails and and everybody can sign up for those trails, right? Like there's no restrictions on those.
There's no restrictions
other than class.
We actually don't restrict the vehicles at all. You kind of choose your own adventure. However, if you show up to the trailhead and your guide says, "Hey, I really don't think you're equipped for this trail," say you're in a TJ on 33s and you accidentally signed up for a 9 rated trail, we'll move you into the right trail. So you still have fun that day. But for the most part, we let kind of people do whatever they want and we'll get them through the trail. And it's the one thing it isn't is a parking lot. And that's one thing that, a lot of people think, a guided trail ride, you're going to be sitting in a parking lot. And I hate that idea. So, we limit the population based on difficulty. If you're on a 10 rated trail, you won't have any more than 15 vehicles on the trail. Like that's a lot. And you still get done with the trail in about 4 hours. And all of our population limits are geared toward making sure that everyone gets through the trail within 4 to 5 hours.
That's not bad at all. Nope. So outside of the regular trails, then what else? You had a couple of other competitions, right? You had the We Rock competition.
Yeah. So at 2:00 every day of the event is some sort of what we call free rock sports entertainment. And so, Tuesday of the event, we have the Fab Fours Trailbreaker Qualifier, where 12 drivers that are trying or attempting to get into the Trailbreaker, they all get on one course and try to break that open faster than the other. And this year, the top 5 drivers from that will move on to the Trailbreaker. On Wednesday, we have the Maxxis Rockzilla side-by-side shootout, where 12 drivers will race through a closed course similar to Trailbreaker, but at the difficulty that pushes the side-by-side community beyond their limits. And then Thursday, we have the BF Goodrich Tires Trailbreaker. That's 12 of the best drivers in the world with the most insane, up-to-date equipment and vehicles, all attempting to break open a new trail that has not been driven by anyone. That's on Thursday. And then Friday, we have the We Rock competition. On Saturday, we have the O-Bar Tires UTV Challenge. And that is pretty cool. They're going to actually link up 2 vehicles with a winch rope in between them, but that has a break point. So like a manufactured aluminum piece that breaks apart at a certain tension. And they have to navigate through the course together at speed. And wherever that line breaks, that's where they're going to basically stop time and stop. That's as far as you made it in the course. And the one to make it either the furthest or finish the course the fastest wins.
Does that go over one of the existing trails, or is that a new trail that you do that with, or how have you guys decided to do that?
It's an existing trail that we built for the Jeep launch of the JL EcoDiesel and the 4xXe. We do launches here for Jeep as well. And we call it 7 Slot, which is the trail, and it's not published on any maps because it's a fairly short trail, but it's fun for people to mess around with and kind of push their stock vehicles to the limits. And so they'll be on that. And all of those motorsports every day of the week start at 2 p.m. So you can kind of just understand that once you're done with your trails launch at 9 or 10 o'clock. And when you're done with your trails at 2 or 3, you can swing on by and pick up the rest of the motorsports stuff. And then after that's over, there's always some sort of nightlife going on as well. And so like Tuesday night, we have the Concord Trails Glow Party. Tuesday night, we have the Bilstein Shocks Movie on the Rocks. Wednesday night, we have the Concord Trails Glow Party and then the J.E. Real Rock Sports Gala, 2 separate events. Thursday, we start the Trail Hero Music Fest with the Lax being our headliner and 4 other bands or acts playing. And then Friday, we have Moonshine Bandits and 5 other acts playing. And then Saturday, we have Montgomery Gentry that is our headliner with 5 of the other acts as well. And then throughout that, we also have a vendor show with over 160 vendors. It's free to go be a part of, and any raffle tickets that you purchase to win raffle prizes that are on display from the vendors, all those proceeds go to Racing Anxiety, which is a 501c3 nonprofit beneficiary of the event.
How many people does it take to put this together? Like, I realize that you don't sleep anymore, but how many other people are not sleeping either?
Yeah, so we only have 4 full-time people. Nobody's a paid employee at this point, but we have 4 full-time people that get their expenses covered, basically. And then it takes about 350 volunteers, and our core staff for the event will kind of staff up. There'll be about 20 core staff that really produces the event itself. But that volunteer network is what makes the event even possible. And that's our guides, it's our staff, it's security, it's you name it. We've got a whole crew of people out there that are working really hard to make this the best event in the country.
That's awesome. I really like the amount of stuff you guys got going on at night. It's when you go to events like these, it's you're kind of you get entertained during the day, so you get a trail ride or a guided run or whatever, and then you're kind of left to your own means. And I think the idea around Trail Hero is just to keep you entertained 24/7. It looks like.
Yeah.
Is there time to sleep?
Not for us, but yeah. When we first started building the event, I'd been to a bunch. Obviously, everyone's been to Moab Easter Jeep Safari. I really enjoyed the Jeepers Jamboree up on the Rubicon. That's one of my favorite events. And we kind of tried to model...
Yeah, we just came back from that.
Yeah, it's a great event. And we tried to model our event more actually after the Jeepers Jamboree rather than any others. And what you'll find is,
That's what Bob said, too.
Yeah. What you'll find is that we will...
he meant that in a nice way, though.
Bob and I go
very
way
complimentary
back.
to you guys.
He's one of my favorites. But Bob would, or Jeepers Jamboree, when you get to camp, you wake up and it's immediate. You're cooking breakfast and you've got things going on, and throughout the day, all the way from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed or pass out, there's always something going on. And even though it's you're in one spot at Rubicon Springs, there's always games and fun and lounging by the lake and the vendor show and cornhole and you name it. There's always something. And so keeping that engagement, and I always liked the event because of that. And I'd go to Easter Jeep Safari and get done with your trail and you sit around with your buddies and go, now what? Where do we go here? And yeah, you have a vendor show a couple days, but for the most part, you're kind of left to your own. And it's okay, well, let's go get in a long line to sit down and eat, and we'll wait 2 hours to find a table. We wanted it to be, kind of exhausting. You'd almost need a vacation from your vacation. By the time you're done with Trail Hero, if you did everything, you would look back and go, holy crap, I packed in a year's worth of adventure in 1 week. And that's
how
what
it
we
feels.
want.
That is if that's what you want, it feels like that.
That's how it feels.
That's how it feels.
And if you wanted to feel like 2 years, go a few days before the rest of the event starts.
Yeah, it's immense.
Yeah, two different experiences.
It's a huge undertaking, but at the end of the day, it's quickly become, kind of a premier event, and a lot of that has to do with the community support and all the volunteers and everyone that really makes the event what it is. Because if I just go out there and say I'm guiding a trail, there's only so much one person can do, and it really takes a huge family to put this concentrated effort on.
What was it that made you decide to start this event and have it benefit veterans and those with special needs? What was the driving force behind deciding to do it that way?
So a lot of people don't realize when I've been in the sport for a long time. I started getting into, put it this way, I got my first rollover at 2 years old, and I've been hooked ever since. Fortunately for me, my dad was a terrible driver, and we got in a rollover on the Rubicon. But it's in some sort of professional capacity. I've been in the sport since about 1998, and the whole point was to develop the sport of rock crawling, competition rock crawling at that time. And a lot of times we'd come into these cities and we'd host our event, and we'd kind of pull resources to do it. And then we would leave to go host the next one, and we didn't really get a chance to give back to the community. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about that was getting to know the other promoters and the other sanctioning bodies. And at one point, all of the promoters kind of came together and said, we should do this mega event where there's rock racing and there's KOH or Ultra 4, and then there's rock crawling, and there was all these different forms of rock motorsports at the time. And the problem was all the promoters were so busy, it never kind of came to fruition. So, it kind of got tabled, and I was here in southern Utah. I just moved back in 2014, and I went to my first winter 4x4 event, and they had a great thing going. And one of their struggles was there was a land developer that was moving into, Sand Mountain, or wanting to do a land swap and build a bunch of houses right where John's Trail is, and on West Rim and over by Milt's Mile. And it was going to be kind of the beginning of the end. You build a housing development right next to the drag strip track, and give it a couple years, and the drag strip track goes away. So, Winter 4x4 and the Desert Rats and Utah Public Lands Alliance were really gearing up to try to defeat that land developer. And they were getting a lot of pressure from the county to remain quiet. And BLM was, looking at, what is bringing in more recreation on the mountain, or, more, what would support the city more and the locals more. And a lot of times it's a housing development. So I went to Winter 4x4, and they were really excited. They had 700 signatures, and I thought, well, that's not much, but I can help. And so at the time I went to some of their staff and I said, hey, look, you guys don't know who I am. I've been out of the industry for a couple years, but I can bring you drivers. I can bring you media. I can bring you more trail riders. I can make this event huge, and I'm happy to help you do it. And I was literally told by one of who's no longer with the club, but one of the people, that I just needed to F off. And that sentiment was because only a couple years earlier, there was a guy who was trying to be a nonprofit, but he was not donating the funds that he made from an event at Sand Hollow. And so, he's doing this public event on public lands and was a public entity, a nonprofit, and he was pocketing all the cash. And so they really had a good reason as to have that thought, but they didn't give me any kind of chance to help them. And I said, look, they don't want my help. That's okay. I don't need help. And I just took a back seat. And I was just, I wasn't going to get back into the sport. Maybe I'll just recreationally wheel and have a good time. And so I went back to my own thing. And I had a friend, and we got some insider knowledge of the parcels that this developer wanted to develop. And we thought, well, if I could make an impact, how would I do it? How would I plant economic impact at each one of these locations and show that, hold on, we need this land for the economy here locally. And you really want to make an impact. It's not going to be with 700 signatures. It's going to be with money in business owners' pockets. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this event. But the one thing I want to stand on is that we're going to give back to the community in some form. And, Trail Hero is, because of the way we're structured with all these competitions and stuff, and I'm going to go into why those competitions were important in a second. But because those competitions having a purse and entry fees and whatnot, it automatically put us in a for-profit position. So we couldn't be a nonprofit. And so we said, well, we're going to host this event anyway. We're going to donate because we want to. We're going to have community outreach programs because we feel it's necessary. And that's just the way it is. And the reason why the competitions are important is because that's the one thing I can do to drop a economic impact in each one of these parcels that were possibly going to be literally land swapped with this developer. So I could find out, okay, well, the developer wants to build on the land right next to the water tanks. Well, I'll put a trail breaker there. And okay, the developer wants to build over by the Green Gate. Well, I'll put a side-by-side race over there. And we'd cut in, we'd literally call all the troops out, and we'd drive in the middle of the desert for 10, 15 hours straight, 30, 40 vehicles, and cut in a route, a little racetrack, so that we can hold a race out there. And we wouldn't use, dozers or heavy equipment. We'd just drive Jeeps and Toyota trucks and side-by-sides and create whatever we wanted to create.
Wheels on dirt?
With the okay of BLM. And then once we held the event and showed that there is real economic impact, and the city was then in support of off-roading being on the mountain, it was a no-brainer for them to tell the developer no. And to show how close the developer got to Sand Mountain, it's very simple. If you're familiar with the area and you're coming down SR7 into Long Valley, which is at the big valley on the left-hand side and the river, Virgin River's on your right, just beyond the fault line is a very big D.R. Horton housing development that's going to have over 2,600 homes in it. And that's the developer that almost built on the mountain.
Wow. And it continues to be under threat, doesn't it? Isn't there someone trying to build on the mountain again?
So they get the land that was in that last land block, the
Warner Valley.
So the big to-do last year was Long Valley getting a lake. Now, this lake has been in the plans for Long Valley since the early 60s. So this isn't new. It's nothing that, has been kind of just dropped on the industry or anything. The locals had been pushing for this lake for a while, and we're in a desert community. Like, look, we need water. That's not the issue. But the issue is every time you build a lake, public lands turn into private property and housing gets built. And one of the things that Washington County is really good at is setting aside property through land swaps or whatever for water conservancy district to have land. And that essentially happened here with Sand Hollow Lake. This whole area was BLM and Sitla. And at one point or another, there's a land swap. Water Conservancy gets the land. They build the lake. Now that lake is a state park. The other properties around the lake then go up for sale. And now there's Dixie Springs, which is where I live. Where I live right now used to be dunes and public land. And all that kind of happens because things get developed. And so again, it's one of those things where there were a couple individuals that knew about this BLM meeting that was taking public comment on whether or not the lake should be put in. And they were going to kind of hold that meeting close to the vest. And what they didn't realize is that I had gotten word of it from BLM, and I then sounded the alarm, which brought 1,500 people, 1,600 people into the public library meeting room, which obviously only holds like 25. And we kind of inundated the whole thing and blew that meeting out of proportion. But that was the goal, was to show, hold on a second, there is a lot of people here that care about this. And if you're going to continue with the lake, which we all know we need, make sure that the land around it doesn't get developed for houses and all this other stuff that is just going to take away our access to the mountain.
Yeah, I think that's one of the shows of strength in that regard. Just showing up 1,500, 1,600 people strong in a meeting like that, I think is one of the best things about the last couple of years of the land use and groups like Trail Hero that sounding the alarms.
Yeah, well, and we had less than 24 hours to assemble that mass of people, and man, the community they're fed up. People are tired of losing land, and the unfortunate part is a lot of different agencies make it very difficult to make a public comment. They want some sort of a substantive comment that is 3 paragraphs or more, and to be honest, nobody's got time for that, and they've all got to be different. You can't just sign this one thing that we all agree to and submit one document with 20,000 signatures. They want 20,000 separate comments, and
Right.
It makes it very difficult for people to have a part in this, especially when we're asking for public comment 10 to 20 times a year versus all over the nation. So it's cumbersome, but at the end of the day, it's worth it, because if you're not helping fight for somebody else's land use issues, like San Rafael swell or something in Colorado or New Mexico or even California, if we're not fighting for those, then when those go away, the target moves to the next one and the next one. It's this progressive thinking that will eventually get all public lands closed down. And so when it becomes your turn to need help, to get people to help fight for what you've got, nobody's there. You can only blame yourself because you weren't there to support the people that needed you before. So we really need to, as an industry, kind of embrace this whole land use deal and almost go like punk rock with it, instead of going, well, I'm not going to Moab because they don't like us. I'm going to pull my dollars away. I'm the guy who's like, go to Moab anyway, spend your money regardless, and flip them off as you go by. Not necessarily, don't actually flip them off, but punk rock. Like,
they might complain a little bit about people flipping them off down Main Street.
Yeah, like we're trying to get hearts and minds, Rich.
You go into it a little bit more aggressively, going, we're here, we're proud of it, and you're not going to push us away. And it is what it is. Like, you have a problem with us, and tough, because we're not going anywhere. And that's kind of, the way I think we need to start approaching this land use stuff is like, don't give an inch. I'm not going anywhere, and stand your ground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ben's been on the show, and he's talked about how he got some flack and gotten some flack for the defend your ground comment, or slogan, but it's all we got at this point. And we've talked about it before. It's that they closed 30% of the routes in the Labyrinth Rims. That's because that's what they could get today.
Yeah.
They'll be back for the other 60, or 70% later.
Yep.
It's just a matter. It's just inches, and in their game, it's just a long game. And so for us, we just have to start playing it.
Yep.
And it's awesome to see groups like Trail Hero really step out and do that. The industry needs to get involved. Jeep needs to be more vocal about it.
And it's not just the manufacturers or the Jeepers. Or, if you really think about it, the off-road industry as a whole is the largest it's ever been. And there's a whole user group out there that doesn't get any recognition or even love, and that's the side-by-sides. And there's I get it. There's a group of people out there that are bad apples, but overall, they are part of what makes the industry so big now. And because of that, we have more influence. If we can bring all this in and rein it in and organize, we have more influence now than we'll have ever had in the history of off-road, because there's more users. And so we need to kind of be inclusive. It's one of the reasons why Trail Hero is the only event that is all encompassing. We don't discriminate. It doesn't matter what you drive. We've got a place for you. And it's because we need to bring together the industry and do something that really combats all this off-road land use issue.
Some of the narrative out there, especially the narrative of the side-by-sides versus the full-size. Like that's a big deal. I think we can have those community conversations internally and be like, and then publicly have a better conversation that's more united.
Yeah.
And I think events like this make that happen. So, all right, well, let's get off the sometimes depressing subject of land use.
Where do you see Trail Hero going, I guess? Like, I know that you guys have done like a little bit of Trail Hero, like Japan, right? Or something like that. Like, what is like your vision for future of Trail Hero?
So, to be honest, it's a difficult thing for us because we want to grow and do things and have more impact on a more national level. However, I have a hard time with the notion that I'm going to host a Trail Hero on the East Coast and then, in year one, have the same impact and the same expectation that we have in year 9. And so, really, expansion to the east is probably not going to be happening anytime soon. And especially in, the looks of what may be an economic downturn, it's just not wise. However, when we do our Trail Hero International events, it's a little different because, like in Japan, we're getting paid by the Japanese government to host the event. On top of that, every event that I host over there on new parcels, I get a 99-year lease for, which then I sublease it to a lumber company. Basically, how this all works in Japan is one of the biggest off-roaders that is in Japan. He's the largest distributor of off-road parts, and he owns an off-road park as well. He is what you call a legacy family. And what that means is his family was one of the founding families of the country. And upon doing so, his family was tasked with providing lumber for the country and the government. So upon that, they were given basically mountain ranges. And over the course of knowing him and the history there, they've got over 27 mountain ranges that they either own or own leases to kind of cultivate lumber for the country and harvest lumber for the country. And I can help him pull in more land when the Japanese government comes to me and says, hey, we want to help bolster our middle class. We need something fun for them to do. We want Trail Hero to come to Japan. We'll give you a hectare, which is like 640 acres. And every time you host an event on this land, that land becomes your lease. And so I get a 99-year lease, then I sublease it to my friend, and he uses it for harvesting, which the government is totally in tune with because that's the process for them regardless.
Purpose of that area.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it works out really well for us. We get the land, but what we're doing is promoting off-roading because there's a whole trail network so that they can harvest all the trees. So every 30 years, they'll cut parcels in, grow new trees, and so on and so forth, and responsibly lumbering the area, and it
so
creates
does that
more
parcel
off-road
become an off-roading area?
Yeah, it does, and all I have to do is
That's
host
awesome.
a single Trail Hero event there. So we've now hosted 2. We're our 2 parks, if you want to call them that, are part of a park network now that my friend kind of manages, and we're getting ready to go in 2025 to our 3rd park and kind of open and develop that as well.
That's cool.
That's really awesome.
All because I started talking to this Japanese off-roader about his build one day on the trail, and it just grew from there.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's usually how those kinds of things happen, though. It's usually a snowball.
Do you have a lot of people come from the U.S., bring their rigs or ship their rigs over to Japan? Is that a thing, or how does that work?
It is. Yeah, we the last time we went to Japan, we shipped, well, the first time we went to Japan, we shipped 3 vehicles, and we had 6 families go with us out there. And we spent about 9 days and did, sightseeing. And it's probably like 5 days of off-roading and 4 to 5 days of sightseeing and being a tourist and going and checking things out. This last Trail Hero Japan, we shipped 6 vehicles out there. We had 10 families go with us, and it was 11 days that we were there. So we really got to see the countryside and get engulfed with the culture, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of.
And how many
awesome.
participants from Japan were there?
So the Trail Hero in Japan is the largest off-road event in Japan. There was over 450 overlanders, over 80 companies in the vendor row, and for participants, their scene is a little different. There's only about 40 to 50 competitors in rock crawling. All the off-roading that they do is at these parks. They don't have open countryside and like we do here in the U.S. It's more actually similar to the East Coast, where if you want to go wheeling, you go to a park to do it. And usually those are private parks. So Japan's very similar. So what they tend to do is they go there and they overland and they kind of camp on site, and then they might go do a trail or two throughout the weekend. But their camp kind of remains set up. Well, the extreme guys, which are the competition guys, there's only about 40 to 50 of those in the country, and they all show up and they go to these events as well, and they compete just like you would in competition rock crawling here in the States. But it was the biggest effort that Japan's seen in the off-road realm, and we're pretty happy to be a part of that.
That's way cool.
That's awesome. So is there anything else other? It's just Japan. Do you have going to take it anywhere else?
So as of right now, we've been approached in the States. We've been approached by 24 different cities or counties on either building a Trail Hero or moving Trail Hero there. Some are willing to pay a lot of money to do so, and we don't really want to leave Southern Utah, and so it kind of gives us some ability to negotiate with the state park and BLM and the city to position ourselves to make Trail Hero slightly more affordable to host. But at the end of the day, I don't see us really, in all honesty, moving the event or doing another one in the States. As far as other countries are concerned, we've got about 4 or 5 other countries that really want Trail Hero to develop in those countries. That's actually an easier process for us than it is in the States. However, we tried to actually do Iceland this year in 2024, and the government was on board, and then our liaison that the government just chooses for us ended up increasing their fees because they knew that the government was kind of helping us build that. So it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. It became a little too expensive for everyone going, because Iceland in and of itself is already more expensive than anywhere else.
Right.
So we canceled Iceland this year, and what we've started looking at is possibly doing something like Spain, France, and Italy area as one trip. And I think that would be a lot of fun. But right now, our next international event is Trail Hero Japan in 2025.
Very nice. Well, I feel like we're coming up here in the end of the time I promised for you. Anything else that we should get in here before we get out of here? That you want to
Trail Hero? Any trails left to sign up for?
Yeah, so we have lots of trail availability. There's some of the trails that have been sold out and have been since minutes of opening. But what we've done is we've added more opportunities. So if you wanted to run the maze, and it's sold out on Tuesday, it's being run twice on Thursday or whatever. So there's plenty of opportunity to still get on the best trails. We have a lot of trails that are, there's maybe 7 spots or 13 spots still available. Some of the easier trails that can take more vehicles because they're easier have a lot more room as well. So it's really open to anybody. You want to learn about off-roading and learn about your rig, and go check out Southern Utah in any capacity that you're comfortable with. We have a place for you. And then additionally, one of the things that we're developing this year is the Trail Hero education program, where you could take your stock four-wheel drive vehicle, you've never off-roaded, and we're going to put you in a class so that you can learn why it's important to air down, what gears to go into before you attempt any kind of obstacle, including a sand hill or dirt road or whatever. And so that entry level aspect is literally the earliest point of entry in off-road. We have something for you there as well. And then for those that want to push their vehicles a little further but aren't comfortable figuring it out on their own on a guided trail ride, we have what we call an intermediate education class as well. So you have your JK, you're used to wheeling on 6 rated trails, and you really want to see what it would like to push yourself and get on a 7 or 8 rated trail, but you don't want to hold up the group. We have a class for you to be able to do that with as well. And so the education program is kind of growing quite a bit. And we have other classes like winching 101 techniques, recovery techniques. We can do, or we have, trail welding classes as well. And so there's all these different groups and companies that are really involved in making the off-road experience a lot more enjoyable for anyone at any skill level. And then on top of that, we have recovery crews where if you are on a harder obstacle and you end up breaking something, they're going to get out there and weld you back up, get you off the mountain, and get parts ordered so that you can go into someone like 23 Diesel or Sand Hollow Off-Road or Dixie 4-wheel drive, get your vehicle repaired so you can get back on the trail the next day. So it's really kind of a all-inclusive idea. When you get on a guided trail, you're not just going for the guided trail, you're going for all the hookups, the recovery, the fixing, the experience, and not just being guided on a trail.
One of the nice things about the event as a whole is the a la carte-ness of it. You can get in for it's not that expensive to be a part of this event, and you can kind of dial it in.
To go on a guided trail ride is only $50 for each trail. That's not per person; that's per vehicle. And then, to get into our vendor show is free. If you don't want to go on a guided trail ride, you can go explore the mountain in Southern Utah for free. We're not holding you back. If you want to, partake in the event, but you don't want to go on a guided trail ride and you want to give, we have this thing called the Hardcore Pass, which gets you a map of the hardest trails in the mountain. Puts you in for a couple raffles like winning a Warn 90 RC winch or a set of 42-inch BFG sticky crawlers, which are unobtainium at this point. They're hard to get. So, there's something for everyone. You don't have to be, a guided trail ride guy or girl to experience the event and have fun doing so.
Nice. All right. Well, Pope Randi, you guys got any final thoughts or questions?
I'm just excited for Trail Hero.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Yeah, we're at the moment we're all planning to be there for this, and this will be the first time that we're all together in person since we started this podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna drag
last year.
We're gonna drag JD around on trails that are too hard for him to do, and we're gonna have fun doing it.
Well, the problem is that he knows I work for Trails Off Road, so I have some information about the difficulty levels.
So, Pope and Randy, what's your favorite trail on the mountain?
The Fallen or the Maze? Those are my two favorites on the mountain.
Why?
Why I love the Maze because it's just it's technical enough. I don't feel like it's very dangerous, but I feel like it's built for my Gladiator loves it, and I feel like for the most part it just I just like how it feels going through that thing. Every line is a little bit challenging. The drop gives you an alert that you're on this trail. And it just kind of keeps going like that for the whole trail. And that's one of the things I like about all the trails out there for the most part on Sand Mountain is you hit them and you're going for the whole time. Like we did Double Sammy. The first obstacle on Double Sammy was the hardest obstacle we've ever done in our life. And then the trail just kept going and going and going for hours.
That
Pretty
was our
relentless.
first trail in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was our first trail in Sand Hollow.
Yeah.
And now it's funny. It's the first time we went on it, it was a 4-hour trail and we could not believe that we just accomplished it. And then we did it by ourselves in like 30 minutes after doing it like 5 or 6 times. It's kind of interesting how Sand Hollow works like that.
And I like the Fallen because of the meaning behind it. It's kind of a special trail. You finish up at the memorial at the end, and like every obstacle is dedicated to a war, I just feel like it's a great respect to our veterans. It's a great trail to do. And the crack at the end is a kind of a butt clincher. So
I like it. You know what? I like the Z-turn way better.
The Z-turn is so fun.
You just walk up to the Z-turn and go, how? And like once you've done it, and then you just
like the fascinating thing about three-wheeling out there, and your hood's level, but you only have 3 wheels touching something, and everything works out nice in the end. It's just a blast. Those are the kinds of trails that we love to do.
Yeah.
You know what I like is the second half of Papa Smurf, like going after
the Smurfette part.
The Smurfette part, dropping down, that drop down. That's
that
probably
one
of my favorite areas.
And
that's pretty cool.
And since I love my throttle, I love slip block goals for my throttle.
That's a good one too. Yeah. All great trails. And most.
What about you, man?
Awesome.
You're the guy who's mapped them all.
Yeah. So, I really enjoy Joint Effort. That was one of the first trails in the mountain that I did. It's a cool warm-up trail. It's 9 rated, so it really pushes your vehicle and you, but it's still not too much. And I'm more in the buggy crowd. And to be honest, I like a lot of the different trails out there. We just opened a new one called Dead Broke. That's kind of the idea of being dead broke is when you break a horse, before you break the horse, it's green broke. Once you've broken the horse, it's called dead broke. And so the trail's now broken open, and that's kind of the name of it. And I wanted to kind of tie in the whole Bronco idea to the trail names out there as well, since I feel like we've got a couple, Jeep related names. So I like dead broke. All of the trail breaker trails on a more extreme level, which really hits my heart, is they're super fun and super intimidating and exhilarating, and when you finish them, you really feel like you accomplished something. But I also really enjoy Papa Smurf, and one of the original trails in the mountain, Arrowhead, which is rated 10, and it just anytime you're out there wheeling, and you can enjoy the therapeutic benefits of being off road and not have to worry about anything, and just all of that goes away. That's always a good day. And so any trail out there is worth being on, even if it's just an access road. But there's some that I have a more affinity to than maybe some of the others.
Fair enough. I also would like to call out the fact that you called a 9 a warm-up. That may fly for Pope and Randy. That's not going to fly for me, my 35s.
So that was the original warm-up trail, and now our warm-up trail is Arrowhead, which is a 10, and the Arrowhead used to take us 3.5, 4 hours to complete. Now we're doing all the bonus lines on Arrowhead, and we're doing it in about 25 minutes. It's just kind of next level. You once you get used to it, like the first time you were on Double Sammy, it was the craziest thing you'd ever done. And then, the 5th time you're on it, you're like, wow, I'm pretty comfortable here. This isn't so bad. And, at one point I thought it was relentless, and it was just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And then you realize, well, I've done that a couple times. Now let's move up to the next one. Let's try a harder level. And
that's the problem with Sand Hollow. It's like, here's a little bit of crack. And then here's a little bit more crack.
Pope and Randy
here's
have
a little bit more crack. No, that's the coolest part about Sand Hollow. There's 2 things about Sand Hollow that are neat. Is number one, it changes all the time. So like an obstacle that you've gone over and over and over and you can't get up it, you'll go back one time and all of a sudden it's got way more sand in it and you can just get right over it. It's just a totally different, but then at the same time you get so used to the more you're on that rock, the more you're like, oh, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. That's not too bad.
You feel like a superhuman driving your vehicle in heights and places you would have never imagined because you're driving on 80 grit sandpaper. It's
Right.
you're
Right.
not
Yeah.
driving on slick rock or polished granite. You can literally drive your vehicle in places that is unfathomable, and you can do that
Yeah.
only at a place like Sand Hollow, where the terrain is relatively new. Even though it's become more popular, I can go out on the mountain right now, and there's not a soul in sight. And so
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's one of those things that, like, you give it a good rainstorm, the whole trail changes, and
Yep.
or a good windstorm, and the whole trail changes. And so,
Or a good rainstorm and it's nice and slippery and it's funner to drive on.
yeah. But then you get to the top
You
of
guys
You
are
Got to
crazy.
Be Nuts, and you go, holy crap! I can't believe I just drove up, a 85
Right.
foot cliff on the side of a 400 foot cliff, and
Right.
and you conquer it, and you go, wow, that was the most exhilarating thing I ever did. And then the next day you go, wait a second, I can do a bigger one right over there. And it
And
just
that's exactly why I
compounds.
like the maze. It's one, those are the kinds of feelings that just get me every time you get up to the top of that, and you're like, holy crap, because you look down and you see the 400-foot cliff that you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
amazing.
my fear. That's my fear about going
What?
for the first time. Is that it's going to be like that? It's going to be chasing the dragon, and I'm done. I'm just going to be in Sand Hollow for the rest of my life.
That's kind of the
Not a
point.
bad
That's
place
why
to be.
everyone moves here. When
See, the cool
when
part about
That's true.
when I first moved here in 2014, there was, probably 40 people in the St. George Jeepers Club, and I was one of 2 people that owned a buggy in southern Utah. And now that same St. George Jeepers Club has over 350 active members. The buggy crowd, to put it lightly, I know of 65 rear steer portal cars that are no less than $100,000 each that live here in southern Utah, and that doesn't include
Yeah.
other buggy people as well.
Those are not cheap vehicles.
No, and like some of these guys, they'll host a buggy breakfast, and I'll go to their house to go have breakfast with them, and there will be over $2 million worth of buggies sitting on the road just waiting to get, people hanging out at the house to get breakfast and then go trail wheeling. And that's just, it's so unique and so different here. It's insane. And that doesn't include that price tag doesn't include the trailer and the truck that's towing it, and all the spare parts. That's just the car. So, it's pretty wild what we have here in southern Utah.
It's kind of awesome. It's like I live in Colorado, so I have a different build for different purposes. If I had a buggy, if I had Pope and Randy's builds, I'd be out there every single weekend.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ridiculous. I enjoy the act of learning how to use my vehicle, and Sand Hollow seems like the ultimate playground to do so.
It is.
Our only problem is we started out with Jeeps. We didn't know better.
Well, the crazy thing is we all started out with, some sort of Jeep. I started out with, to be honest, a Dodge D50, made by Mitsubishi.
Cool. Damn.
And, put 60s under it and went wheeling, and everyone starts out somewhere, and
Yeah.
I pushed my stock suspension and axles so far that they were always breaking, and I thought, well, I got to upgrade. And so I started putting Dana 44s underneath it and realized halfway through, hold on, there's bigger axles than that. So I started putting 60s underneath it, So it's been a progression for everyone, Everyone in the sport started at the bottom and worked their way up.
It's a hell of a drug.
It is a hell of
Sand
a...
Hollow is the worst drug.
Drugs would be
All of a sudden
cheaper.
You're like, I just need a little bit more clearance. I just need a little more of this. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, I just need a little more suspension.
Just need a little
stand.
more flex, just a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, we should probably get out of here for you, Rich. I really appreciate you coming on the show. So for those of you listening out there, this is airing well before the Trail Hero for 2024. So get out there. Plenty of trails still open. Registration still open for all of that. And tickets and stuff are still open for all the concerts and stuff too, right? All that's still, can you pre-do all that?
So we have tickets that are available all the way up until September 15th for trails. And then we close down online ticket sales. We have some organizing to do 15 days before the event. And then we open them back up. So if you weren't going to come to the event and literally last minute, you're like, I can go wheeling tomorrow, I'm going to show up. Come anyway. Register for a trail on site. We'll make room for you. Just get here, go have fun, and enjoy what we have.
Awesome. All right. Well, Rich, thank you very much. I hope that we get a chance to run into you. I know you're going to be a busy man, though. So
I hope you find me. Hopefully, you guys are at one of our parties, whether it's the kickoff party or any of the late night stuff. I'm usually a little easier to get a hold of there.
All right, we'll try to figure it out.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you're out there in Radioland, go ahead and get on trailhero.com. You guys are on Facebook, Instagram. That's pretty much it, right? Nothing else. YouTube.
Yeah.
Those kinds of fun things.
Those fun things.
Yeah. And then you have I should plug this real quick. You do a live on Tuesdays, right?
Yeah,
on Instagram.
We do Trail Hero Tuesday, which is aired both on Facebook and Instagram, and it is a live vodcast, basically video, whatever, where we talk about all things Trail Hero, and it's all live right there. And what you say in the comments, we will talk about on the show. So really cool and interactive way to get involved with the event from home. And hopefully we see you out here in October.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Rich. And check out trailhero.com. And that's it. We'll see you next time at the Trailhead.
See you guys.